Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm part 104 probably. We've been doing a lot of linguistics and logic obviously, keeping our physical and mathematical intuitions and proofing in mind when we need them. Today we're continuing on. We will be jumping back over to physics to start and working back into our definitions and trying to find our final definition, which probably won't happen today. But I wanted to talk about a little bit of division and sharpness, how sharp an object can be. I think there's a scale for it, and if you'll learn it in 8th grade geology class or whatnot, but just what materials can cut what other materials. So I just wanted to play around with a physical thought experiment, but just thinking through the logic and implications of what cutting means and of what sharpness means. So you can't divide. We've discussed in our episode division that starting from our physical basis, if you have to have an object to divide in the first place. If you don't have an object, you can't divide it physically. You can't use anything imaginary. It has to be a real physical object. But you can't divide anything to zero. So then if you think about it, you break it down, and just assuming, again, it's not solidified if the electron is actually the smallest. Again, it's not a point particle, it has internal structure. We can't measure it because of energy limits, but is the quark, the bounding of 3 quarks, smaller than the electron? I don't know. I don't think so. But the point is, it doesn't matter. So you just take the smallest object, we'll just assume it's the electron. We don't have to prove that, we'll just assume. But when you're cutting something, you break it down, you have a big chunk of hydrogen. You break it down, and then you literally just get to that 1 proton, 1 electron. And then you take another molecule of hydrogen and you brush it up to each other. Can an electron cut an electron? Let's just say you have 2 electrons trying to touch at maximum energy they can. What has to happen to make it? Well, first of all, we have to define a cut. And so if I take my pen, or if I take a knife and I cut down, I'm not going to define that as a cut. I'm going to say return to the starting place. So think horizontally if you're cutting a steak or cutting some bread. Not just the forward motion, but the backwards motion as well. So do it with me, everybody. Forward, backward, forward, backward. And so we're going to define one cut as a forward and a backward motion. So your position, time elapses, your hand returns to the initial position. And so one cut is 1 forward and backwards motion. Because what happens when we do that is, well, now that becomes a vibration, right? That's what a vibration is. And we define vibration. Well, words are already naturally defined, is what we're getting to with the consistency of language. So we assert something exists, the phenomenon vibration, and human beings have called that vibration. And so, but vibration isn't movement. Again, think before R3 when we can move as independent systems. There's no physical structure. There's just one state of vibe. Again, that sounds too philosophical, but again, there's no intuition for these early states that I can describe to you, as I've told you multiple times. But there's no way for anything. Movement doesn't make sense before 3 dimensions. So a cut is a vibration. It's a forward and backward, going from the beginning position to the end position being the exact same coordinates. And so movement is defined as, again, we have the existence of vibration, and then we define movement as not vibration. And so movement is displacement over time. And we can extend that logically with movementality and mentality, again showing the relationship of speciality. Mentality is the basis of movementality. Obviously, you have objects that can move before human beings were around, or sentient objects or beings were around. But we're describing sensorality. It's coming from a personal perspective. Anyone that's articulated logic is an individual. Human being, not human being, but it's a sentient being. And so our basis is the individual, the personal, the subjective, and we're trying to get that as close to objective as possible. But we extended our logical definitions of our words there. But then I just have sensorality is mentality. What is mentality? A word we use all the time in common context. You have to have a good mentality, have a good attitude, have a good character. And so again, just working on breaking down the logic. But again, just think of that. 2 electrons push up to each other, and you have to consider the shape. We'll get back to sharpness, right? Well, I think diamond is the just the spherical packing densities, how dense can you pack spheres, electrons, protons, neutrons, anything that can be modeled as spherical on a relative distance and energy scale. But just, you can have brute force. You can smack a diamond and crack it open and break it, but you can't scratch it. You can't, an object that is sharper than another object, or I don't know if sharpness is the right, I'm trying to connect something there, I don't know, but sharpness, the ability to cut, and then density, or what's like the quality of not being able to be cut, whatever that is. But some emergent property of density and of the arrangement of the atoms. But so you can't, again, that intuition just came. Can you? It doesn't even have to be an electron, but just what is cutting? And to me, it made a bunch of physical sense to define a cut as a vibration, just one fluid motion, and then motion is not vibration. So again, vibration was our basis, and then we said, how do we say what this other thing is? Well, it's not that. And so that was the big kind of logical connection. And then we connected that through mentality being speciality and relating to movementality. So that's kind of the final result. I'm going to keep it right there. I'm not going to say anything more than I need to. Again, sharp and cut. An object that is sharp can cut. Can you say all objects that are sharper than other objects can always cut them? Or, again, what is the quality of being resistant to being cut? Is now a physical thing, is probably a word out there, and it's going to play into our definition somehow. So I'm going to end it there and pick up with our other sections.